Okay, good morning, everybody. So I'm Christian Acosta, agricultural educator of Cornell Cooperative Extension, Allegheny County. For today, I'm pleased to present this houseplant masterclass to all of you. And so let's see what is this about. So the agenda for today is the introduction, and we are going to be talking about how to select houseplants. So selecting houseplants, transporting the houseplants, where to buy the houseplants, and the plant requirements. So okay, let's start. So just in general, um, a houseplant. What is a houseplant? So it's just every plant. It doesn't matter if it's an herb, a fruit, vegetable, or ornamental that grows indoors. So usually we can think that just houseplants are these plants that we can see just small for the office or for our house, the tropical plants. But it's actually any plant, even if we want to grow tomatoes, we want to grow parsley, we want to grow uh, pumpkins. If we have the space indoors, we can do it, and this becomes a house plant. Some is just every plant that we are growing indoors. So um sorry, it's about selecting houseplants. So how to start selecting houseplants. So here we're going to see. So we have that the houseplants are just a diverse group of plants, and they can come from different environments. They can come from very hot areas or very cold areas. So when we see, for example, the cacti, they are usually a cacti. They are just in the desert, very hot areas, but after long process of being adapted to some conditions, especially indoors conditions, that is totally different than the desert, they still can survive. So with this comes the first tip, and it's about just the fact that we go to some environments and we want to grab a piece of the plant just to try to grow it at home. It doesn't mean that it's going to be successful and that it's going to be good, it's going to be okay, because if we don't have the same conditions, probably the plant is not going to do well, and we probably is gonna die at some point. And if it grows, it's just not always is stressed and not growing in an optimal condition. So about selecting plants, we have some tips about before buying the plants. So before buying the plants, we get as number one is we get the plants that have been already adapted to your environment. So how we know when they are already adapted to our environment? So this is something that we're going to see in the next slides, but just in general is when we can see the plants just there in the nursery or the greenhouse or in the store, that we every year we can see these plants, and even in the house of a neighbor or some friend, and we see that the plants are doing well in this environment. So the second step, the second tip is take in mind your space. So if it's big or it's small, there is enough light. How tall is the space? Because probably you can get just a small plant, a new plant that you got, but actually it's a coconut plant. So it's going to grow a lot, just vertical. So how tall, and about the plant that you're getting, how it's going to be that plant. So in that case, we need to think about first in our space in order to get a new plant for our space, for our house. And also the time. So if we have enough time to be taking care of the plants, or if we just have a couple minutes per day and it's not enough time for that. So the third tip is about just looking for plants, healthy plants free of insects and diseases. Sometimes this is a typical common that all of us we have done this common this made this common mistake, and it's about just picking a plant and it's beautiful. Just we can see that it's green, or well, the color that the plant is normally is and just normal. But when we check the undersides, there are something like we can see here. So we have, in this case, fungi and also insects on the underside. So you always check about the undersides, because there sometimes we can bring some pests and some diseases to our house. And also when it's something that can happen, and is when it's a beautiful plant, and something like we can see to the right here. So it's so like it's beautiful, but it has maybe a branch or a leaf or something that is just dry, and it looks like brown, like it's not good looking, but is the last plant in the store. So we can think, okay, I can bring that home and it's gonna be okay. I can cut that part and okay, it's gonna be okay. And in many cases, yeah, that happens, and we can just keep growing our plant. But also, if this is a disease, or it's a virus, or if some pest that is causing that color that is literally killing the plant, so we can bring some hotspot for diseases and for this kind of microorganisms and diseases to our plants, and even to the other plants that we have at home. So this can be also just making you lose your plants and lose money about all the plants that you can buy. The tip number 4 in this case is, if it's possible, if it, in the store, you just remove the pot, you remove the plant from its pot and check the roots. So we can see here two examples. So to your left, here we can see just the, even when it's a lot of roots, like in this example, we still can see that they are like healthy. This color like white, yellow, like creamy, and sometimes green. So like in the case of the orchids, and but even like in that example, that is not like optimal condition to be picking the plants, even like that is healthy. So if you can check the roots in the store, it's okay. If you cannot, so just you can also like dig a little bit just with your finger and check the roots, because this is very, very important. And that has happened to many of us, that we can bring a beautiful plant home, but when we are repotting, we can see that the roots are damaged, or there are some insects or fungus or something in there, and it is too late. So if you can do it in the store, just check for something like to your left that is healthy, and to your right, something like this that looks like black, brown, like brown but dark, that appearance like oily or like water. So in that case, it's just no, just avoid that plant, because that's gonna die. Even when they have, in this case, this example is an orchid, and the orchid can be just perfectly with their flowers, and the leaves are still green and it's beautiful. But with roots like this, that orchid is going to die at some point. It's hard to recover when most of the roots are that color and that appearance. So in general, just avoid plants, and this step is just avoid plants with some colors like this. So yellow or brown leaves, or the borders that we can see. Sometimes the plants, they have yellow leaves, and it's normal, and yellow, red, or even some brown colors. But it's not normal when most of the leaves are green, and when normally is green, or what kind of white or green, but we can see something like this, like brown, and this is spots, and it's just in an area, just one area of the plant, well, couple leaves, or is growing just from the bottom to the top, or to the top to the bottom. So that is not normal. In that case, just avoid that plant. We need to be picky about selecting our plants to bring home. In this case, yeah, we need to be very picky. Of course, nothing is so perfect in nature, but Also, just something like that, that small, just a leaf like this, can be a focus for diseases or pests. Also, the second example, here we can see some wilted or torn leaves. So, like in this example, the leaves are green, right? They are green, but the shape is not like good looking. And you can see because we can have some healthy leaves and they are just normal. And these ones, they are not yellow, they are not brown, but the shape is different. So in this case, also even these can be an example of a virus. So also even with virus, it's so hard to control a virus. It's not that easy to apply a product to control this. So if we can prevent this just in the first moment when we are buying our plants, it's way better. And now something like that example. In this example here we can see, and it's excessive root, and they are healthy. In this example, they are still healthy roots. We can still see here around that is a tomato plant, and they are healthy. But with roots like this, so we at some point we need to remove that pot, and we are going to break these roots. And in many cases, so in most of the cases, this is going to be okay and no problem. We can remove the pot and break some of the roots and the plant still survive. But this is a high risk just to open every time that we cut some part of the plant, especially the roots, is just like opening the door for diseases, for bacteria, for nematodes, and many microorganisms that can be there and we cannot see. We don't know if even they are there or not. So just to avoid taking that risk, just check for these steps before buying your plants. And now, well, first, I'm gonna stop a little bit here and so about the selecting plants in this first part. There are some questions already about these steps that I mentioned before. Okay, now questions, we continue. About transporting houseplants. So this can sound like something so normal and like, well, it's not like a big deal, but actually it is, and this is a very important step when we buy houseplants, because just in this moment of the transporting the houseplants, here our plants can be damaged and they can die, or this step can make them survive at home. So why is that about? Let's see this example. So for example, here we can have two extremes. To our left, we have very hot, an example of a very hot environment, a damage because of heat, like too much heat, it's too hot. And to your right, in this example, we can see a damage for cold. So when it's too cold. So in this case, let's start for the first one. To the left, we have a Monstera that was left in the car at 75 degrees Fahrenheit, and it was less than 2 hours. This was a real example. And just as you can see, the leaves are black, and it's hard to recover the leaves when they are turning like that. And sometimes the effect is that fast, it's just quick and fast. Sometimes is after after hours or the next couple days, and we can think like, oh, the plant is sick, it's a disease for a fungus or for virus or something like that. But in this case, it's just the heat. The plant is healthy, it was healthy, but just being in the car just less than 2 hours with 75 degrees, it was enough to damage the plant. And usually these plants that they are not that cheap, so it's losing money. Well, in that case the plant can recover, but it's not nice looking, at least for a couple days or even weeks, while the new leaves are growing. So In the other side, to your right, you have this example of Saint Paulia that is damaged by cold. So just checking the picture, and if it's just like this, I can see like, oh, maybe I can think that it is damaged by herbicide or some chemical or even some virus or something like this. But when we see the context, that in this case it was exposed to the very cold temperatures, freezing temperatures, even for a short time. So we can see the damage here. So the plants can be sick also because of the temperatures. So what is the advice in this case? The best thing that we can do for transporting our houseplants. So for the heat, in the case when we have very hot environments, when it's summer, or we go to some areas that is too hot, so over the 70, above 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So in this case, provide shade in the car. So even something that is a common mistake is that we can put the plants in the car and just put the AC so it's comfortable, it's nice inside of the car, even if outside is too hot. But because of the glass of the car, it can create, in the sunlight, it can create that magnifying glass effect and still burn the foliage, still damage your plants. So in that case, just provide shade with a paper bag, with a light fabric. You can cover your plant, or just put the fabric or the shade on the windows. So in that case, if you need to leave the car for a couple minutes, the plant is going to be okay, because in that case, it's not direct sunlight being just there like burning the plant. And well, for if you have a truck, that is something that another example. If you have a truck and you are going to put your plants in the back of your truck, it's okay. It depends the plants. So some of the many plants, they can survive that condition, but some tropical or very like exotic plants, they can be like very sensitive, because remember that we are talking about house plants, so they are not used to the temperatures outdoors. They are not used to very like intense high sunlight, or just different that variation of temperatures. So if we can just cover our plant or give it some shade, or if it's not too hot, if it's over 70 degrees or less, we can still transport our plants in the back of our truck, and it's going to be okay. Just make sure that the substrate, the soil, is wet. So in that case, the transpiration, the plant is not losing the water that is inside of the plant. When it's too cold, so in that case, yeah, it's necessary to cover your plants. In this case, when it's too cold, temperatures below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, in that case, it is necessary that the plants be inside of the car. So in that case, no plants in the back of your truck. And also covering the plants just for a short run, like going to the store to your car, because this is even when it's just 1 to 2 minute run from the store to the car. In that moment, when the plant is exposed to a freezing temperature, especially when it's very low temperatures, like today, for example, that we had 28 degrees outside. So that can immediately damage the plant just for even if it's just 1, 2, or 3 minutes from the store to your car. So in that case, just put some fabric, a light fabric. It is not necessary like a specific fabric, just if it's not too heavy, that also can damage the plant. But if you're in the store and you forgot your fabric, or some fabric bag or something like this, just with the paper bags that you can see in the grocery stores or in the nurseries, these bags, they are okay. Just also a plastic bag, because if just something a short run from the store or the nursery to your car, just cover the plant and go there and put it in your car, and it's gonna be safe. So just doing something so simple like this, we can save our plants because as I mentioned before, we can do this just transporting the plants in this step, we can damage our plants and it's something that we cannot see just in the first moment. In this case, like with this Monstera, yeah, we can see it in almost immediately, but it's not the same for all of the plants. So another important step here is where to buy the houseplants. So, well, this is educational, and we are not. I'm not going to recommend like specific brands. So it's more about the tips about where to buy our houseplants. So let's move this a little bit here. And so where to buy our houseplants? So the number one, and is here is where we can see like why or how to know when the plants are already adapted to our environment, like how to know when the plants are already adapted to your region, your area. So, and this is so simple, and it's just shop in your local stores or nurseries or the greenhouse. You can go and see that the plants they have the same plants year by year, and they are locally growing these plants. So they are already adapted to this, and this is why this is the difference about buying, for example, a cacti from these stores, from the nursery, so from our local stores, and versus going to the desert and grabbing a piece of cacti. So of course the difference it's way like two extremes. So when they are locally adapted, so they have more, the percentage is higher that the plant is going to survive and it's going to do well at home. The second advice or the second tip is the plants that you can see at the supermarkets or these big stores or grocery stores, it doesn't mean that they are already adapted to your area, to your local environment. And this is because they can bring plants from too far from another states or another places. And for example, here in Allegheny County, we have the microclimates, right? So even sometimes just going to grab a plant to a town close to our town, that can be a difference in the temperature in environments, but it's like not too much or too aggressive the change for the plant. But many of the well, not many, but some of the plants that we can see in the grocery stores or these big supermarkets, these big stores, they come from another areas, and they look beautiful because every time that the plant, as the some of the plants are turning yellow or gray or brown, they are just removed from there and replaced with a beautiful one, and it's a constant production. So this happened to me a lot, especially with orchids. I have been growing orchids for more than 10 years, and no problem at all, like down in Colombia, because we were growing local orchids, and they don't need like even a lot of care or fertilizer, or they almost that they grow by themselves, and no problem at all. In buying, so now when I moved here to upstate New York, and I was going to the stores and grabbing these orchids that also they are expensive, they are not that cheap, and taking care of them, just fertilizer and everything taking care, and still they were dying. So what is the reason? And even not microorganisms, no, not diseases, not anything, and they were still dying. So what I can think is about that they are not from here. So when the plant comes from a total different environment, it's going to be stressed, and at some point it's going to die. So it's hard for the plants to survive when it's not their uh, environment, their original environment. So finally, after 7 orchids that I had that they died, finally I was able to grow one, and it's still alive, it's still doing well, but taking a lot of care with these orchids. So this is also something important in this step, and is if you want like exotic plants, something that is not locally being not locally growing in your area, so they are going to need, they are more picky about temperature, about water, about all the plant requirements that we are going to see next. um, and just this fact that what we can see in these big stores is not already adapted. It is totally different than our local greenhouse or nursery um, stores that we have around. And the number three is when you buy online, that is something now that everything is just easy to buy online. So if you buy online, also the transportation can damage your plants. So in this case is about reviews, about especially about reviews. If someone else bought plants from that company and they say, yeah, it's okay, and the plants are okay, they did well, they did great, so okay, just by recommendation. If the shipping is safe, because in this moment, remember that if just 1 to 2 hours transporting our plants from the store to our house, that can damage our plants. Now imagine 1 to 5 or 7 days that the plants are going to be in a truck or in multiple hands, different environments, different altitudes. So uh, just make sure before buying online that if it's safe, okay, you can go ahead and buy your plants, and also that you need to provide the proper care and conditions, like I was mentioning with the orchids, for these new plants. So also just a tip in this step is that if you're not sure about the requirements for your plant, that plant that you love and that you want to buy online, just you can Google it about requirements for Flechera, Monstera, well, so the plant that you want to buy. Remember that also you can grow vegetables, you can grow whatever you want indoors and make a house plant, but if we have the conditions for the plant. So now something that is also fundamental. Now we already picked the perfect plant. We took care about the transporting, and we got plants from a local store or a place that is safe to buy. And finally, the plant is at home. So now what? What is the next step? So just taking care of the plant. So is the plant requirements. Well, let's see. What is this about? And the number one and principal one in this case is the light. So light is fundamental for the plants. Like all we know, always we know this. Uh, and when we are thinking about light, so you have to consider about the intensity of light, the quality and distribution of light. Remember that it's not the same to have the plants out there in the garden, that we don't need to take much care about light because it's already done just by nature, rotation of the earth, and everything is just done by the nature. But when we have the plants indoors, so we need to take care about the light and provide enough light for our plants when it's not too much light or too little light. In this case, so we can see an example here, and it's a jade plant. And here, so is the same variety, the same plant is not different. There are no different plants here, but the one to your left, this one they grew. This plant was growing in an environment with low light, low intensity of light, and the one to the right, it has just enough light, just the proper intensity of light. So always they are growing in the direction of the light, and we are going to see why this happened just in the next slides. But now here is about the intensity. So remember that the sun, the position of the sun is different in every season. So we have more sun in the room, like indoors, in the more intensity of light in the winter than in the summer. But also in the summer we have good temperature and we don't need to provide like extra light in this case. But what about if you want to grow your indoor plants, your house plants, but you have just the space in a small apartment or the basement. So of course in the basement is not almost there is like none light or just like a small window. So what can you do in that case? So something nice about technology and everything right now is that you can get fluorescent lights or LED growing lights, and this can improve the quality and also can be a supplemental light. So these lights, they are not that expensive. We can think that, oh no, they can be just like hundreds of dollars. No, just LED, for example, these square ones that we can see in this example, the LED growing lights, they are just from $30, $40 more or less. So it depends the brands, of course, but we can find something on a budget, and it's a good purchase because they last for long time. So this can be like a supplemental light if you don't have like enough light from the window, or like a big place, a big window, or a condition and space where it's enough light for the plants. Um, in this case, always, well, this is just an example. So about how these lights needs to be in different heights. So if it's the first stage is when it's seeding, when it's growing, or when it's flowering the plant. So we need to be adjusting this light. This is something that is not, how to explain, like just an unique size, because this an unique how to explain this, just like something mandatory, that's the word, because every company, it depends if it's fluorescent, if it's LED. So they have these kind of charts where you can see how tall or low, like how to be adjusting the light for your plants. So sorry, about the distribution of light. So here we are going to see like why is that the plants are taking that, like those shapes every time that we put them close to the window, or sometimes when they are just a little far from the window and they keep growing towards the window. So why is that? The protagonist and everything here is because of just one vegetable hormone that the name is auxin, as we can see here. So in natural, just in natural outdoors, when it's in natural conditions, the auxin is this hormone can be just evenly being produced just evenly in the plant, and in that way that follows just it grows normally and it follows the source of the light. But when we move, when the distribution of light is not even, and when we move the source of light, in this case, the example is here to our right. So the auxins, they just go to the dark side of the plant, the dark side, and that stimulates the elongation of the cells. So in that case, the plant can be moving towards the sun. So this is fascinating to see, to understand, to know, especially when you are doing these experiments, and how to see how the plant always is going to look for the sun, for the source of the light. When something like this is happening is because our plants, they don't have enough light, or the distribution of light is not even. So for this small, not problem, but for this to avoid this kind of shapes, or sometimes like plants that the stems are too long and they are not growing like in a beautiful way, in that case just keep rotating your plants. And it depends like how the distribution about your plants in the window or the place that you have indoors for the plants, just be rotating the plants and they can be just fine with it. Also, just as we mentioned before, you can get an LED or fluorescent light in the, so in that way you can put it in the dark side, so to help this uniform distribution of light. That is something that I also do with my indoor plants. So this is just in general about light. Also that I mentioned that I forgot to mention here is about the surfaces. So when we have a just clear surfaces, that contributes, that increases the intensity of light. When we have dark surfaces, that reduces the intensity of light. So this is why sometimes, I don't know if you have seen people or someone who puts foil, just like aluminum foil around the plants. So this is not recommended. It's not it's not going to damage your plants, but that can contribute to damage your plants, because when they need light, but when it's too much light, the plants also can be like stressed and start dying or just acting different, just not growing in a optimal condition, because it's just too much light. And this is the name, just stressed by light. So just avoid this, and just with the LED lights, it's going to be a complementary light. It's just something that you can do for your plants, and the only recommendation is just take care about how tall are you going to, or how close to the plant are you going to place your LED or fluorescent light. Something fundamental, also fundamental for the plants, are the water. It is the water, sorry. So it's something that, well, yeah, all we know that water is fundamental. But is something about water is not just going to open the just the handle and get some water and go and apply to the plants and that's it. Because even watering our plants, we can see that sometimes they are not doing well. And so for water, we can see we need to pay attention about the quality, and just taking care about not overwatering or underwatering the plants. Especially like right now in the winter, we can just be falling in the mistake of over watering our plants, because for these days, houseplants, they don't need like first fertilizer. They don't need to be uh, they don't need you to be putting fertilizer very often, and also the water. So how to know when it's the time to water? And probably you know this simple method, and it's about just with your finger, just put around 2 inches, just 1 to 2 inches directly on the substrate, on the soil. And if you can see, like in the first two examples, that your finger is just like that, is dirty, or even something like in the second example, so it's still wet. Even if the first inch is still dry, but just the last part, the last part is still wet, it's okay. You don't need to put more water, because remember that they have roots, and the roots always go to the bottom of the place. So in that case, you don't need to put more water, and just wait until it's totally dry when you put your finger and it's just dry, like in this case. So as you can see here in green, so yeah, go ahead. When it's dry, go ahead and put water. They need water. If not, just wait. Also, you can buy something like this that well, I'm not mentioning brands or that this is something that is the best option here. Is just an example, and it's about soil moisture meter. So these meters, they can also measure the light. So it's two parameters in one device. So we can check the moisture and we can check the light. And they are not expensive. They are cheaper. You can find these ones for even less than $20, $10 sometimes. They are cheap devices, and you can easily check the light and the moisture of the soil for your plants. And about the quality of water, so for these areas, usually we can have more basic water or hard water than with higher pH than the lower pH. So why is this important? pH is about just the hydrogen that is in the concentration of the hydrogen, that element that is in the soil. And this is important because this can make the nutrients available for the plants or not available for the plants. So when the pH is too high, when it's 7 or higher, even if we put the fertilizer and we buy the best fertilizer on the market, even if it's liquid, if it's ready to put there directly on the plant, but the pH is too high, it's difficult just because of the chemical reactions that it's happening right now there in the soil, in the substrate. It's hard for the plant to take those nutrients. So just keep pH or the pH always, as we mentioned in our pH clinics, it's not always the same. It's not 5 is optimal because probably 5 is good for blueberries, or even lower is good for blueberries, but it's not good for another plants. So just in general, 5 to 7 the pH, the parameter about pH. How to know about the pH? Well, there are some devices that you can buy, or the easy way, if it's easier for you, you just can grab a sandwich bag and just 1 or 2 cups of soil from your pots from your garden, and just take it to the extension office, the closest extension office, and there you always can find the pH test. And it's just, for example, for Allegheny County with Cornell Cooperative Extension, it is just $3 the pH test. Or every year we also develop the free pH clinics, the soil clinic, pH clinic, and you can bring your soil samples, and we can measure the pH so you know in what is the range of the pH. So if you already know this parameter about the water in this case, okay, perfect. So if it's between 5 to 7, yeah, so it's good. When we are indoors, so it's easy for us just to think, go in and get some water and put directly to our plants. But if we are using the softener for the water, that usually is salt, so this sodium chloride, that salt, that can damage your plants. So just if you're using the salt in the softener for the water at home, that can be safe for us, but it's not safe for the plants. So in that case, that can even damage the tip or the marginal. It's like a marginal browning of the leaves. You can see the damage because just the tips of the leaves, or just around the leaf, it start turning brown, and also the roots can be damaged. So also for well water, so just for well water, or for any water that we are applying to our plants, it's not every month or that often, but always is better to test our water. Also, in the local extension offices, you can take the water samples, of course, before taking samples of water, because water is a different treatment than soil. You can call to know how you can collect the water sample and take it to the extension office, and your water can be tested as well. Well, now about temperature. We have the water, we have the light, and now about the temperature. So some of the foliage house plants, for example, tropical plants, they need around 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit um, in the day during the day, and 60 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit at night. Some of the plants with flowers, especially, they need cold, like something cooler at night, and that can be 55 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit at night. But well, here it comes something important, and that's when I was mentioning before in the first part of the presentation about taking care of about taking in mind our space and being thinking about ourselves first before the plant, because if our house is usually between 55, 60, 65 degrees Fahrenheit, especially in the winter, and we want a monstera, for example, or a tropical plant that it needs above 70 degrees. So in that case, the plant can suffer. And if it's, especially if it's not that, if it's not cheap, a cheap plant, if it's even you're spending a lot of money in some of the plants, so it's better to just avoid sometimes these kind of plants and just get plants that they are going to be more adjusted to our conditions. So if we are growing some vegetables, for example, some tomatoes, they like some of the vegetables they still can survive. They are going to grow a little slower than they grow in summer, but they can survive. They can do well. But for exotic plants, for these tropical plants, exotic ones, they are not going to survive and to be that hardy. So always just, as I always mention, just check online. You can check, for example, if you want to grow um, a specific plant. I don't have in mind something that specific, that exotic. Just check the temperature, the plant requirements, the temperature that they need. And in that case, you know if you can take the risk and get the plant to your house, or it's better just to avoid that and get another plant that can be growing at home. About humidity, especially now in the winter. So it's something that we suffer in our plants, suffer indoors, and it's about humidity because of the heaters and the furnace that can be just reducing and decreasing the humidity at home. So our plants, they don't like that. And in that case, to increase the humidity, especially now in the winter, so as we can see here in the example, a humidifier close to our plants that can be perfect. Also, placing the humidifier, it depends how big is our humidifier. Placing it close to the vent, so it can be just the humidity can be around our house. If not, just place it close to our plants, and also just put the plants together. So when they are outdoors, the plants needs to be just like a little, they need to be a little far, one each other, between one each other. But when they are indoors, especially in these cold months, it's good to place them just together, and they are not going to suffer. And every now and then you can just spray like a gentle, a fine mist with water with a sprayer, and that's not going to hurt. And it's nice for the plants because they are going to be too dry in these couple months. And the fertilization, so to use fertilizer now in the winter, so I'm talking because now we are in the winter, so they don't need to be. So normally, just in another season, yeah, you can just put the fertilizer and they are happy with that, but not for the cold months. So if you do it, for example, you have some plants that you are putting fertilizer in the summer or in another season, just every month or every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks. So now do it just every six. If it's every 2 weeks, now you do it every 4 weeks. Just double. of the time because they are growing slow. They are not being happy like when it's hot and it's a perfect environment for them. So the principal nutrients, like most of the fertilizers, you can see the principal nutrients is the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So we can see the letters here, NPK. Now the quantities. So this is about the plants that we are growing. So you can check fertilizer for tropical plants, fertilizer for orchids. So different every plants they have different requirements about nutrients. So when we have these plants, always just as all I always mention, go and Google it about what it needs, what they need. It's not just grabbing a random fertilizer and going to apply because sometimes we can burn our plants, right? Or sometimes we can be just putting just too little fertilizer and they still are turning yellow or red or brown, that the different colors about nutritional, the different colors they are expressing, they are showing us that something is happening and they are not getting enough nutrients. So commercial fertilizers, you can find fertilizers that they are already just there for you to spray on the plants and it's ready. Some of them are direct to be sprayed directly on the leaves, on the foliage. Some of them they can be just like granular to be placed around of the plant. Always try to avoid, especially for the granular one, avoid to place it just directly in contact with the plant because that can burn the plant, that can harm the plant. And for those, the frequency for all of these instructions, just read the label. I know that sometimes there's a lot of information in those labels and it's like I'm just gonna put a little bit in water and I'm going to do it. And yeah, sometimes the plant can survive and nothing happens, but sometimes we can do that and the plant is turning immediately next day or even the same day is turning like yellow or brown. So we are burning our plant. So even when it's a lot of information and a tiny letter, uh, read the label and follow the instructions. That's always for fertilizer, for pesticides, for everything that you're using, especially if it's a chemical one, for your plants or for something alive. Just take the time and read the always the label and check the instructions in the label. And again, to know like what our plants need, what is the requirement, so you can just look for the plant for the requirements of the plant. Now we have a lot of research online that we can access for free. You can just check plant requirements for flechera, for orchids, for the Phalaenopsis, for the Monstera, for specific plants, and you can find that information just for free there in some research websites. That also just check about the websites if you can trust more a website from an university, from an extension office than a website just from a place that even you cannot see any bibliography or reference. So this is just the first part of this presentation about how to take care, how to grow our plants indoors, our house plants. And here I want to share this saying from Beth Dito, like a beautiful plant is like having a friend around the house, and especially our, these times of the year that is too cold and everything is just dark and brown. Probably the pines, they are still green, but having our houseplants at home, it's always nice to see something green and growing and being alive around us. And how to grow them and how to grow the plants and not just killing the plants at home. So this is why we are here today, and we are going to be next week. Next week with these topics about the times to plant, uh, like potting, repotting. So the examples of the house plants, how to some special potted plants, the pest management, what happened when we already have a disease or a pest in our plants, what we can do in that case, moving the plants outdoors when the time comes to move the plants outdoors, and also how to move the plants back to indoors, and just the plant care in general. So just the last 5 minutes, we open the space for the questions that you have for this first part of the presentation. So questions about,
I do have a question.
yes.
With regard to water, you said that you shouldn't use water that's been softened with salt. So in a case where somebody has a water softening system in their home, what would you recommend? I mean, say if you want to purchase jugs of water, should you get spring water or distilled water, or what would be best?
Yeah, if you well, in that case, yeah, you can buy the water, spring water, or just water that it's you can find in the store. These ones that they come in the 5, 10 gallons. Well, I'm not sure how many, but yeah, you can also apply spring water. When it's bottled water, avoid just this distilled water because they don't have any minerals or anything on it. So of course we need some minerals and we still need something there in the water. So about bottle or just going to buy water, just avoid the distilled water. Something that I got for in this case for plants and also for fishes because I had problem with softeners and the quality of water for tropical fishes. In that case, for the fish and for the plants, I got osmosis reversed. Osmosis, the name is the osmosis reversed filter, and so that can be like a little pricey in the beginning because well, mine is not too big and that was close to $200, but I have that one the last 3 years and it's still working. I haven't had to replace still the cartridge or something. So in a long period, you see that it's not that expensive instead of being buying water for in that case for the reverse osmosis water it's necessary also to put the fertilizer to be checking about the applying fertilizer to the plants because it's the same that with the distilled water. It's just pure water. It's clean that it doesn't have any minerals or something on it. But it's also another alternative that can be cheaper in a long period of time.
Okay. What about municipal water that's been treated with fluoride? Is that okay?
Yeah, that can be okay. Because it's not like too high the concentration of the fluor. For in that case, you just in a bucket or in a recipient, you can just put the water and leave it there for at least 12 to 24 hours, just one day. Because in that case, if there is some chloride in that case that easily volatiles and that is going to be safe for the plants and also if you have and like in my case I was offering to have good quality water for my fish tank, so you just leave it there for one day for 12 hours one day and it can be safe for the plants and also for animals.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, more questions? We have more questions. If you remember more, you have some questions, just probably you forget now. And then, oh, I forgot to ask something about this. You always can say, well, we have a next session next week, but anytime for not only houseplants, you can also about anything about the gardening, growing plants, about agricultural questions. You can every time reach this email or this phone number that you can see here. Sometimes we cannot answer immediately, but we take the questions, and if we don't know, in this case, when I don't know the question, I send to the team because there are a lot of experts in different areas, and we can find the solution or the answer for your questions. So you can reach to this email, cfa34@cornell.edu, or this phone number here. Oh, sorry. Or just save the questions for our next session for this houseplant master class. There, it's okay. I think we are on time. This 12:03, so exactly an hour. Well, if we have more questions right now, I appreciate your time. Thank you for being here, and I hope that this information can be useful for you, for your plans. And I hope to see you next week, uh, again, 11 a.m. for the second part of this houseplant master class.
Thank you.
Welcome. Have a good day, everybody. Have a good day and good week ahead. I'll see you next week.
Bye.